Hello and welcome to Season 2 of On the Road With. My name's Gareth and I'll be your host. For those of you that are joining me for the first time today, this show is all about talking to touring professionals in the performing arts and entertainment industries about the realities of life on the road, what it's meant for their mental health, the people they've worked with and how they got started. I'd like to thank you all sincerely for your support for the show so far. If you haven't already, you can like my page on Facebook or follow me on Instagram or Twitter. It's Gareth John Music on those platforms, and I'll be posting updates about the show on those platforms. You can also like, follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcast fix. Now, last week I had Mr. Gaz Birtles on the show, and this week I'm delighted to welcome his close friend, collaborator and co-songwriter in the Swinging Laurels. He's also a fellow sax player who's worked with Funboy 3, Musical Youth, Ali Campbell, Sinead O'Connor and many, many more, as well as being the author of the book How Not to Make It in the Pop World. He's been a fascinating guest, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Mr. John Barrow. John, thanks for doing this.
Not a problem.
How are you? You all right?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Just coping well with this house arrest and, enforced house arrest, but all good, thank you.
Good. I was thinking before I asked you about doing the interview. I feel like I know you quite well, and obviously I'm good mates with your sons.
Yes.
But we have never actually shared a stage or a studio together or worked together in any way. It's weird.
I know you've worked quite a lot with my long-time compadre Gaz Birtles, but no, that's very true.
And obviously I've worked quite a bit with more with Niall than Rhett, but I've known Rhett longer, so I've worked with them both as well. And you must be really pleased that they've both gone into a similar kind of line to yourself. Yeah,
it's actually incredible because and Gaz will tell you the same. Gaz Birtles will tell you the same, because we never actually pushed the kids at all. And it was really quite a surprise when when they actually sort of gravitated to it, because it was never sort of like forced on them,
Yeah.
So it's absolutely incredible. I love it.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way, really, isn't it? I mean, I ended up as a kid, I ended up playing a quite a high level of basketball, and it so happened that my dad was mega sporty and was a basketball coach and stuff, but it was never down to him pushing me that I did it. It was, I think that's when you. The kids are doing it because they really want to do it and they're passionate about it, and that's when they're going to enjoy it the most and be the most successful, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, a lot of people actually ask me that question. About the kids, obviously, because I'm sort of fading away a bit now, and actually sort of basking in their sort of glories, but yeah, it was ever so weird how that all panned out. But I'm absolutely immensely proud of what they're doing and what they've done. So it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're the second published author that I've had on the podcast. I had a guy on a friend of mine, Taran Chelly, a comedian who's got published books out there. And so you've just published. Is it your first book?
It's the first book, but it's the third edition. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And how's that kind of looking? I know you had some quite big plans with it and stuff. Obviously, the lockdown has affected things, but has it been sort of well received?
Yeah. Well, it's actually just about to hit. So it's it's just up on Amazon this last week. We've got Kindle and that a bit behind. So. The publisher sort of like it will be generally widely available worldwide, for all the big, Barnes and Noble, Google Books and all the rest of it. So that should be rolling out in the next 2-3 weeks, hopefully.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about, because it's a fantastic title. Me and Spike were, our mutual friend Spike, who was on the first episode, we were talking about the book before we went on air, and saying what a great title it is, How Not to Make It. Can you just take us a little bit about what the book contains and the sort of angle you've gone for on it?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it all came about... I've always wanted to write a book, but I'm not a literary person. I'm not that great, I'm not well-read, quite well-read. But yeah, after years of touring and all the anecdotes and the on-the-road little tales and stories, I always remembered them, and I kept a note of some of them.
Yeah.
I thought one day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to sort of like unveil all of this stuff, to the outside world. And that's really how it started, just really from on the road stories and studio stories and the rest of it.
Well, if only there were a podcast you could talk about all this stuff, eh, John?
Well,
on the road and touring.
You've got to be careful what you say.
Well, that's it.
My publisher is, they were taken over by Americans. Originally, they were Canadians. And this new edition of the book, I've had to take out a few things that were in the original edition of the book.
Yeah.
And I think it's purely because Americans are a bit litigation obsessed in some sort of ways, but we come to a compromise, and we're there now, and it's all out there and ready to go.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, it's one thing I've found doing these interviews is that there's that famous phrase, isn't there? What happens on the road stays on the road.
Uh-huh.
And there's that famous kind of phrase, isn't there? What happens on the road stays on the road. And you're talking to people, and I really want to get the kind of juicy stuff, and the great stories and stuff that they might tell me privately. But then, when it comes to the podcast, understandably, there's some things they go, I'm going to leave that out. And there's quite a few times where people say, I won't name names, but... or I won't say what the venue was, but, and that kind of thing. And I've done it myself in interviews. But it is great that you want to put these things out there, because I think touring is kind of shrouded in a bit of a kind of bubble that people think it's one thing, and actually the reality of it is quite different. Totally different.
I would say, though, Gareth, like as to what you can put in there and what you can't put in there.
Yeah.
I agonised for ages and ages. There were certain things I thought, if I put that in, that's gonna really upset a few.
Yeah.
So you think, you water it down and thought, no, leave it out. But you're dead right. You've got to be a bit careful what you do say, because you don't want to upset people, and you've got friends and relationships and their relationships, and you think, you just got to sort of just be about right.
Absolutely, yeah. Just going on to, Gaz, your like say compadre over the years, Gaz. You're both sax players, and I find that quite interesting in that it's only recently through King Brastards, where we're involving a lot of different brass players, that I've actually got to work with other trumpet players, and I absolutely love it because they've got strengths that I haven't, and vice versa. We compare notes on the instruments all the time. Who's the latest to get a valve trombone as well, and all that kind of thing. All kind of brass geeky stuff. But you and Gaz have worked together solidly, consistently for a very long time, and you both play the same instrument.
Yeah, well, I met Gaz at college. We were about 16, 17 years old. And we would spend while away. We used to skive and talk about being in bands and make names up for bands and stage names. And we all said, we'll be in a band one day. And it, we were lucky enough we did actually go to that. But yeah, I don't know, the saxophones. I think there were a lot of guitarists around at the time, and I remember speaking to some guy from Fern's Brass Foundry, who were a band in Leicester in the mid-70s, and I said to him, I really want to be in a band. What instrument do you think I ought to play? He says, look, take up a brass instrument, mate. You'll never be out of work.
That's exactly what I was told back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I did. And I thought, you know what? I quite like a saxophone, and and it started from there. And Gaz bought one, but I mean, Gaz is a vocalist, really. I mean, through all the sessions, the brass sessions we've done together, Right for You Beautiful South and all the rest of it. He would always say to me, he said, "But I'm a singer, really, though." So he's done amazing well, really, to do as well as a sax player as well, because that's really his sort of second strength.
Yeah, I mean, me and Gaz are on the road a lot together, as you know, and we often talk about singing is his first thing, and sax is very much his second instrument. And whereas with me, it's the other way around. Trumpet was my first thing, and then singing is something I've come to a bit later. So we often kind of compare notes on that. Have you got any other kind of musical, even on a hobby level or whatever?
No, I played a bit of keyboards, but to be honest with you, it's more like a chimp with boxing gloves on. I did backing vocals, but I was never man enough to sort of like do the lead stuff. But yeah, I can do backing vocals, stuff like that. But no, really, that's about it.
So you look at the Swinging Laurels then, which was the band that you and Gaz ended up in, and that sort of had quite a lot of success in the touring sense, didn't it? I mean, when you look at the people you toured with and the places you went to, it was kind of really on the cusp, wasn't it, of doing some amazing things?
Yeah, we were a bit unlucky, I suppose, but I'm not bitter about it. I don't care. Well, Gaz and I formed the Swinging Laurels in 1980, and it came off of the back of working in a band called the Pneumatics, who were a very good Leicester band, towards the tail end of the 70s. Gaz and I started writing and tooting about, and we both, like you say, you both played saxes, and Gaz had a baby mono synth, and that's all we really had, on a drum machine. So, we got a record deal. It was really bizarre, It was just on the cusp of it was the end of the new wave punk thing, and it was just before the new romantic thing started kicking in. And we got a record deal, and we'd never even played live. It was like really quite crazy, but yeah, and then things progressed from there with it, really.
You toured. Just tell me. So do a bit of name dropping for me, John. Just tell me some of the because to be honest, I can't quite recall them. Tell me some of the people that you toured with and alongside. There were some quite big names in there, wasn't there? Yeah, well,
I suppose the major one was Culture Club. We did
that
two UK.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we had the same producer as Boy George, and Boy George was an actual Swinging Laurels fan, bless his heart. He used to buy the records, and we actually got to record with him too. So, probably tail end of 82 through 83, we were sort of associating with Culture Club and Boy George when they had their meteoric rise to, fame, really. But we'd worked with the Fun Boy 3, Musical Youth. We worked with Jerry Dammers, two-tone.
Yeah. Very clever guy.
Very, very clever guy. In fact, he used to come over to Leicester for a beer now and again, and I used to see him in the Prohibition Club because he was dating a girl from the old Leicester Poly back in the day.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he signed a Leicester band called the Apollinaires, and luckily enough, we actually did play brass with the Apollinaires, so we ended up playing on their two-tone single, The Feeling's Gone.
Oh, okay, all right. That all leads us quite nicely onto your first track, John, which was a bit of a kind of collaboration with Boy George, wasn't it?
Lonely Boy, yeah. Well, the way it happened was we'd met George before, and like I say, he used to big us up in the press. This is when Culture Club was starting to take off. Yeah. Our first record for Warner Brothers, Rodeo, it did very well, but it didn't chart. It was on the radio loads. And the second single, Warner Brothers came up with Steve Levine as a producer, right, who was coincidentally producing Culture Club.
Right, okay.
So we went in to record one of the songs that Gaz and I wrote called Lonely Boy. And we needed some backing vocals. I tried, and it didn't quite work. And we had a break. We went out for some, a snack. And when we came back, Boy George was in the studio.
Right. Okay.
And Steve had brought him in to do the backing vocals on this track.
Yeah? As you do.
As you do.
So this one is Lonely Boy. Then we're going to play as John's first pick of the show. Okay, so that was Lonely Boy, the Swinging Laurels. We're going to go on to talking about some of the other projects. You mentioned a couple of them. I didn't know about Musical Youth, actually, because I've done a little bit with them myself in terms of live stuff. I've not recorded with them, but just through chance meetings when we've both been on the same gig, I've ended up jumping up and stuff, and they're a really good bunch of lads, actually.
Cool. Yeah, we sort of worked with them. It was through the Funboy 3, really, because the Funboy 3 were asked to produce the second single, MCA single, is it Don't Blame the Youth or something like that? I can't remember the track. But we went down, and the Funboy 3 were going to be producing. So it was me, Gaz Birtles, and Dean Sargent, the old Swinging Laurels brass section. Yeah. And we recorded it, but MCA didn't like it. And actually got someone else in to remix it. So we never actually ended up on the single. Okay. It was incredible working with them. Because we went down to London to do, put the brass on, and hearing those little voices through the headphones was absolutely incredible. But unfortunately, no, it didn't come out. The version we played on didn't come out, unfortunately.
They weren't as little voices when I played with them.
No, you'd probably be. I'm talking about 82, so I can't remember all the names and that. But in fact, we didn't really meet them, because when we got to the studio, the track was already recorded, so we were only sort of like laying the brass on top.
Yeah, well, that's how it works a lot studio-wise, isn't it? I've done stuff with Paul Weller, but never actually met him. I played on tracks with him, And everyone goes, "Oh, what? Yeah." With the when I was involved in Stone Foundation, we did an album with him, which I did the first sort of part of, and then
of course,
the brass section kind of departed, and then the new brass section came in. People say to me, "Oh, what's he like then?" and all this, and you don't. That's the thing, you don't actually meet these people a lot of the time, even though you've worked with them. And there's probably not another industry I can think of off the top of my head where that's the case. You normally meet in some form the people that you're working with, however big a name they might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a few years ago, I did an album with Radio Riddler with Frank Bembini and
of course,
Naim Cortosi. And I did my bits in a flat in Upperton Road. And all the people that ended up playing on it, and there was some big names in the end.
Yeah, there was,
I never actually I never actually saw them, It just got emailed to New York or Dublin or wherever they were recording,
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about it is that, I mean, one thing that occurred to me when you were talking about the musical youth link there, and it was all through Funboy 3, and it's a common theme throughout season 1. I talked to Drew Stansel, and I talked to Spike, obviously, and they were both very much of the mindset that in this game, when one door closes, another opens. And people, there's certain people that can open doors for you, and one thing definitely leads to another.
Yeah, I've always said to our boys, when they play, I said to Niall, if there's 20 people in an audience, give it your all, because it only takes one person, to make a change to your career and your life. And it's happened to me 2 or 3 times, it really has. It's a weird old game.
It is a strange old game. Yeah, again, incomparable to a lot of other games, really. And you kind of have to be, you have to have had a good few years' experience to really understand how it works, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I'm sort of like getting on a bit now. It's really nice, and with doing the book and everything else, it's great looking back. And I have to giggle to myself sometimes, and I think to myself, you know what? It's a great industry. It's brilliant. I love it to bits. I live it. It's my life. But yeah, there's so many tenuous links. Where if you hadn't have been there at a certain time, that wouldn't have happened. Yeah. And I suppose you could say life is like that, or as well.
Well, I mean, I look at a big example for me is Drew, and I can never speak too highly of him because, he got in touch with me about forming the Paradigms back in the day when I was over in Birmingham, and that was because of Warren at the Donkey, bless him.
Right.
He gave him my card, and he said, I want a trumpet player, but not just the usual old guys, a youngster to come in and freshen it up. But through meeting Drew, not only did we have a great few years with the Paradigms, but it led to playing with Neville Staple. It led to Simmerit with Roy Ellis, and loads of backing a lot of Jamaican artists and recording sessions. And all stuff that you can be really proud to tell the grandkids. I know it's a cheesy kind of phrase, but it's really true.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that, is there, really? I mean, Drew's a great sax player. He's and a lovely guy, as I'm sure you'll agree. But,
he is.
Yeah, but you're right. It's sort of like one door opens, another door closes.
And Drew's also a good example of somebody who's a bit like yourself and Gaz, really. It's a coincidence you'll play the same instrument, but you've kind of carved out your niche in a certain area. He's done his very much in old school ska, rock and roll, blue beat, and he's become the absolute specialist for that. He really has.
Oh yeah, I know. He's got a great style.
Can you talk to us a bit about I want to go back slightly to the Funboy 3 thing, because you've talked about what that led to and the opportunities it gave. But what did you actually do with Funboy 3 itself? What was your involvement?
Well, we played on... they released their debut album called it was the Funboy 3. And there was a track on there that they wanted to lift. It was on the album without brass, but they wanted to put it out as a single, and they were looking for a brass section. And this takes us back, Gareth, to what I was saying, we used to do we did a residency at the Hope and Anchor in Islington, London.
Yeah, I know.
And one night, the Funboy 3 manager, Rick Rogers, was in the audience, unbeknownst to us. And he liked what he saw. He got in touch with our management and said, we'd like these guys to play brass on the new Funboy 3 single.
There you go.
This was just on the back of them. I think they had a hit with Lunatics for Taking Over the Asylum, and then they did the Bananarama collaboration, which really saying it's not really saying something. Yeah, that was out about the same time. Take What You Do, and we just got a call out of the blue. You know, what, do you fancy playing brass on this? And we were signed to an indie at the time, and we're doing all right. We're getting some decent press. But something like this made such a massive difference to us, and we went on to sign to a major label because of it, really, because of the exposure that we got with it.
Well, that's it. You can't really put a price on exposure, and I mean, it'd be interesting if you were able to take that time and put it into today's world of social media, YouTube, blah blah blah, and look at how the propelling might have been different. You know, the upward trajectory, because it's a big thing for individual musicians or bands or artists to piggyback off the back of something. You know, I'm doing it a lot with duets with different singers at the minute. If I do something with them, then they're going to share it to their audience. Their audience might like the odd track of mine. There's a few more fans. Their label might get interested. Cool. You know, it's a lot of musicians bemoan the social media world, but I think it's got some massive pluses and advantages.
Yes, yeah. I often rue if we'd have had the sort of like tools at our disposal back then, the game would have been a completely different game. You know, we had to get out and play the small clubs. We had to go and, you know, up and down the country in little bars and, you know, just to get the name out there, you know, because there was no internet then.
You do it the hard way, don't you? You do it the old school kind of way. I kind of caught the tail end of that with the Paradigms, because we had a Facebook page and we had all the rest of it, but there still needed to be an element of that. But now you get bands and artists who, like, an artist can become massive just from doing a quirky cover of something on YouTube. Yeah. And they never play live. You know, they have a YouTube career. Yeah. And it's like that's even alien to me, because I love performing so much. It's, you know, and gigging's what it's all about, really. And I hope that coming out of this lockdown, it doesn't turn into just a completely virtual world. I don't think it will, because I think I can tell when I'm doing live streams and stuff by people's comments that they miss the live interaction. You know, of seeing a band live. There's nothing beats it, does it?
I reckon that when the lockdown, you know, when all this is over, I think people will want to come out and they'll want to see live.
I'm hoping so. Yeah. That's the optimist in me. But when I have my down days in the lockdown, as we all do, I just think, oh no, what if it goes this virtual way? You know, I can't do this. You know, so
no, it's not the same. It can never replace the feel of a live gig. It's just, you know, that's out there with one of the best feelings ever. You know.
Of course,
and that's just being in the audience, and that's, you know, performance aside, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, John, we're going to play your second track, "The Telephone Always Rings," which is obviously featuring you guys. Was that the track you were just referring to that you played on?
Yes,
the single?
It was. Yeah, "Telephone Always Rings." I think it got to number 17. Yeah, number 17 in England, anyway.
That's what I've got on my notes from you. Yeah.
But it was great. We got to do a lot of TV, and it really got the name of the Swinging Laurels around, you know.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, here we go then. "The Telephone Always Rings."
Hey,
One question I always ask musicians when they come on here, obviously I interview lots of different performers, but one question I always ask musicians on here is live versus studio. What's your preference?
Do you know what? I'm pretty much down the middle on this. I love recording. In fact, I probably prefer to record now. Now I've got a bit older.
Yeah.
Just going in there, a couple of hours, just lay a few notes down. When I was younger, though, the live thing was an incredible spur to me. And yes, I suppose it's horses for courses. You know, as I've got older, I've sort of I've moved more towards the studio side than towards the live side. But I love them both equally, though.
And are you still writing a lot? Because that's one thing I didn't know about you until setting up this interview, is that you've done your fair share of songwriting over the years. Like you talked about with Gaz, etc. Is that something you still pursue, or
songwriting?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, not so much now. I mean, we revisited an old Swinging Laurels track 2 or 3 years ago, but not so much now. I don't really. So I've just sort of like the last few years sort of like played on people's records, just like a couple of hours in the studio.
Yeah.
Pack your sax up, home, feet up, mug of Horlicks, red setter, pipe.
Yeah.
Werther's originals, job done.
Proper armchair sax player these days.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, the album that you referred to earlier with Uncle Frank, that sounds like one of the more exciting projects you've done in recent years. I mean, because I was looking at it the other day, and I'm going to play a track from it to play out the show. But I was looking at it the other day, and there are some big names on there. You know, we were saying how it was strange that it didn't maybe have a bit more success than it did. But there's some really big stars on that album.
Yeah, well, you know what? It was really strange because I got a call from Frank Bembini, one day, and he said, "John, can you do a couple of tracks for me? It's urgent. I need them doing by a day. It was a couple of days." Said, "Yeah, cool, we'll do it." Went in there in Naeem's flat on Upton Road, and I did the 2 tracks. It's a pretty simplistic stuff, and there's no. Yeah. I think there was a trumpet guide already down.
Yeah, that probably would have been Ben Searle, wouldn't it, who did that?
It was Ben. Yeah. It was Ben Searle, yeah. And then Frank said, "Oh, do you mind doing another couple?" And I ended up doing 8. So there's 9 tracks on the album, and I ended up doing 8 of them. And then heard nothing for ages. And I think what they were going to do is fast Brian Fast-Lisa from The Criminals and Frank Membini.
Another very clever guy, Fast. Another very clever guy.
Incredible musician, yeah. So they were putting this album together under the name of Radio Riddler, and I heard nothing for quite a while, and then I saw Frank somewhere, and he says, "Oh, it's still happening, but we're getting some guest vocalists in." And I said, "Who have you got?" He said, "Sinead O'Connor, Suggs, Ali Campbell, Beverly Knight." I said, "You're joking." He says, No, it's all going down. It's all going down. And it happened, 5 years in the making, which is absolutely incredible. But it took me 2 hours. So I was in a flat, 2 hours work, and then before you know where you are, all this happened and all on top,
Yeah, I actually bought the page up on Spotify for the album, and I'm looking down at you've got Suggs, Deborah Bonham, Citizen Cope, Sinead O'Connor, Beverly Knight, Ali Campbell. The only track I think I heard from it at the time, because it was all over social media, was Purple Rain, Ali Campbell version,
Yeah, that's the one public. Well, that was a single. I think Beautiful Ones was a single as well. I think that actually Frank sang on that. And they did go out and do some of the live. Well, they supported UB40 on a couple of tours.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah, because a couple of my sort of colleagues were involved in that. Adrian Blissett, I think, was involved.
Yeah, I know Adrian. Yeah, I've worked with him back in the day.
And Jimmy was on it as well, I think. I call him Jimmy Stallone. Jimmy Lindsay, trombone.
Jay Lindsay.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah, he was playing his trombone, wasn't he?
Well, on that note, John, I'm going to play the show out in a minute with one of those tracks that we just mentioned from the Purple Reggae album. But I'd like to just thank you sincerely for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been a good eye-opening interview.
Absolute pleasure.
And all the best to the lads as well. And
thank you.
Stay safe during lockdown, and hopefully we can go for a beer one of these days. Because like I say, we're never actually. I think we've only met 2 or 3 times properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But no, you've told me a few stories that I didn't even know about. So and I know I do admire what you're doing too. So you keep going, and thanks for asking me.
Thanks very much, John. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for episode 3, season 2 of On the Road With. My guest was the affable Mr. John Barrow, and I really, really enjoyed his company. I'd like to thank him massively for his time, because it was a really interesting conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you like what you're hearing, please do follow, subscribe and like us wherever you get your podcast fix. And you can also keep in touch with us on social media. So it's Gareth John Music on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And I'll be posting updates about the show, including new episodes and bonus content, etc. on those platforms. If you've got any guest suggestions or any feedback on the episodes at all, you can email me directly as well. It's garethrdjohn@gmail.com. If you'd also like to leave us a review at Apple Podcasts, that really does help spread the word of the podcast far and wide. That'd be absolutely fantastic. I'm going to play the show out now with the track from Radio Riddler from their Purple Reggae album in 2015 that myself and John talked about. Featuring Sinead O'Connor, it's I Would Die For You. Take care now. Bye-bye.